ExamPrep.School. Colorado Casualty Insurance Producer Exam code INSCO-CAS4. There are 4 practice exams in this series. This video covers Practice Exam 1. The first 20 questions are free. In this video, we will be covering the following major categories for Practice Exam 1. Colorado statutes and regulations. Common to life, health, property, casualty. Colorado statutes and regulations. Common to property and casualty only. Colorado statutes and regulations. Pertinent to casualty only. Insurance terms and related concepts. Policy provisions. Types of policies, bonds, and related terms. Let's walk through the format. I'll read each question and its choices. Let's get started. Question 1. Under coverage A of a standard commercial general liability CGL policy, which of the following best describes the coverage trigger for bodily injury and property damage? A. A bodily injury first reported to the insurer during the policy period. B. An occurrence of bodily injury or property damage during the policy period, regardless of when a claim is reported. C. A claim made against the insured during the policy period. D. An insured party suffering injury or damage during the policy period. A countdown circle appears in the top right. Once it completes, the answer is revealed. You can pause at any time if you'd like longer to think. If you'd like additional practice covering more topics, see the description for our book. The correct answer is B. This option is correct because coverage A of the CGL policy is an occurrence-based insurance that requires the bodily injury or property damage event to take place during the policy period, regardless of when a claim is reported. Reason A is not correct. This choice is incorrect because reporting the claim date does not establish when the injury occurred, and the event occurrence triggers coverage. Reason C is not correct. This choice confuses the occurrence trigger with a claims-made trigger, which is not used in standard CGL coverage A. Reason D is not correct. This choice misidentifies the insured party as the trigger event, rather than the occurrence of bodily injury or property damage. Question 2. Under coverage B of a standard commercial general liability policy, which of the following would qualify as an advertising injury offense? A. Patent infringement in an advertisement. B. Bodily injury arising from a customer's slip and fall incident. C. Breach of contract with a supplier. D. Disparagement of a competitor's product in promotional materials. The correct answer is D. This option is correct because coverage B protects against offenses like product disparagement, which is a recognized advertising injury under the CGL policy. Reason A is not correct. This choice is incorrect because patent infringement, while an intellectual property matter, is generally excluded under standard advertising injury provisions. Reason B is not correct. This choice is incorrect because bodily injury incidents are addressed under coverage A, not as advertising injuries. Reason C is not correct. This choice is incorrect because breach of contract is a contractual liability issue, not a personal or advertising injury offense. Question 3. Which statement best describes the nature of medical payments coverage, coverage C, under a standard commercial general liability policy? A. Provides indemnity for the legal defense costs and judgments in third-party bodily injury claims brought against the insured under coverage A. B. Reimburses the named insured for any medical expenses they personally incur as a result of a covered bodily injury within 1 year of the incident. C. Pays reasonable medical expenses for bodily injuries to non-employees without determining legal liability if treatment occurs within 1 year of the incident. D. Pays for punitive or exemplary damages awarded to injured third parties in bodily injury lawsuits against the insured under the policy. The correct answer is C. This option is correct because coverage C provides no-fault payment of reasonable medical expenses for bodily injuries sustained by third parties, regardless of legal liability, if incurred within the specified time period. Reason A is not correct. This choice is incorrect because indemnity for third-party lawsuits falls under coverage A, not the no-fault medical payments provision. Reason B is not correct. This choice is incorrect because medical payments do not reimburse the insured's own expenses, but pay others' medical bills directly. Reason D is not correct. This choice is incorrect because punitive damages are excluded and not covered under medical payments. Question 4. A landscaping contractor installs new permeable pavers in a client's walkway. A week later, a visitor to the home trips on one of the uneven pavers and suffers a sprained ankle. Under a commercial general liability policy, this claim would be categorized as which exposure? A. Pollution exposure due to materials used in the installation. B. Products completed operations exposure since the pavers were installed and completed. C. Auto liability exposure because the contractor's vehicle was on site. D. Premises and operations exposure covering activities at the job site. The correct answer is D. The injury occurred on the insured's job site during active work, which is classified as premises and operations exposure rather than products completed operations. Reason A is not correct. Pollution coverage is excluded unless specified. Tripping on pavers isn't a pollution claim. Reason B is not correct. This involves damage from a finished product after completion, but the injury occurred during site operations. Reason C is not correct. Auto liability applies to vehicle operations, but this incident was on the premises, not a motor vehicle accident. Question 5. A general liability policy has an each occurrence limit of $1 million and a general aggregate limit of $2 million. During the policy year, the insurer pays two separate claims of $600,000 each for slip and fall incidents. How much coverage remains available under the policy for a third covered claim? A. $800,000 remaining under the general aggregate limit. B. $200,000 remaining under each occurrence limit. C. $1 million remaining under the each occurrence limit. D. $1,200,000 remaining across both limits. The correct answer is A. Each occurrence limits reset per incident, but the general aggregate is reduced by payments already made, leaving $2 million minus $1,200,000 equals $800,000 for the policy period. Reason B is not correct. The each occurrence limit remains intact at $1 million and is not reduced by prior claims. Reason C is not correct. This ignores the aggregate reduction. Although each occurrence limit is $1 million, aggregate funds are depleted. Reason D is not correct. Payments do not combine limits. Only the aggregate decreases and it totals $800,000 remaining. Question 6. An insured under a CGL policy is sued and requires defense counsel. Which of the following expenses would be paid under the policy's supplementary payment section rather than the policy limits? A. Settlement awarded to the claimant by final judgment. B. Medical payments made directly to injured third parties. C. Property damage repairs to the insured's premises. D. Lost earnings for the insured to attend hearings. The correct answer is D. Supplementary payments cover defense-related expenses such as reasonable lost earnings to attend hearings without reducing policy limits. Reason A is not correct. Judgments are paid within policy limits, not as supplementary payments. Reason B is not correct. Medical payments are a separate coverage part and reduce policy limits when paid. Reason C is not correct. Repairs to insured property are outside liability coverage and not supplementary. Question 7. Under a commercial general liability policy, which individual would be considered an insured while performing activities within the scope of business operations? A. A vendor hired to provide food at a company event. B. A delivery driver using a leased vehicle not listed on the policy. C. A part-time clerk employed by the named insured. D. An owner of a separate subsidiary corporation? The correct answer is C. Employees of the named insured are insured for acts within employment scope. A part-time clerk is included under the policy's definition of insured. Reason A is not correct. Independent vendors are not insured unless specifically endorsed. Reason B is not correct. Leased vehicles not listed on the policy are excluded from the insured definition. Reason D is not correct. Owners of separate corporate entities are not insured unless the subsidiary is named. Question 8. Under an auto liability policy, which coverage component provides protection for legal defense costs and damages resulting from injuries to third parties? A. Personal injury protection. B. Property damage liability coverage. C. Medical payments coverage. D. Bodily injury liability coverage. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is bodily injury liability coverage because it indemnifies against third-party injury claims and pays defense costs, whereas property damage liability only covers physical damage to others' property. Reason A is not correct. Personal injury protection covers the policyholder's own medical and related expenses, not third-party liability claims. Reason B is not correct. Property damage liability is limited to repairing or replacing others' property, not covering injury-related damages or defense costs. Reason C is not correct. Medical payments coverage is a no-fault benefit for medical expenses, not for third-party liability or defense costs. Question 9. Which characteristic is unique to a combined single-limit auto liability policy compared to split-limit liability policies? A. It imposes separate per person, per accident, and property damage limits. B. It provides one total limit that may be allocated among all liability losses. C. It requires different deductibles for bodily injury and property damage losses. D. It prioritizes property damage payments before bodily injury payments. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is the combined single limit provides one overall limit that can be applied to any combination of bodily injury or property damage losses, whereas split limits enforce separate caps for each category. Reason A is not correct. Split limit policies, not combined single limits, impose separate caps per person, per accident, and for property damage. Reason C is not correct. Deductibles are not differentiated between bodily injury and property damage in standard liability policies. Reason D is not correct. No ordering of payment priority exists under a combined single limit. It can be used for any type of liability loss. Question 10. What is a common limitation of medical payments coverage under a standard auto policy? A. It requires the insured to be legally liable before coverage applies. B. It applies only to occupants of the insured vehicle. C. It reimburses lost wages and pain and suffering. D. It covers medical expenses after liability limits are exhausted. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is that medical payments coverage applies only to occupants of the insured vehicle. It does not cover pedestrians or injured parties outside the vehicle. Reason A is not correct. Medical payments coverage is a no-fault benefit and does not require legal liability to be established. Reason C is not correct. It covers reasonable medical and funeral expenses only, not lost wages or pain and suffering. Reason D is not correct. It pays regardless of liability and is not contingent on liability limits being exhausted. Question 11. Which loss would be covered by comprehensive auto physical damage coverage but not by collision coverage? A. Damage when the vehicle overturns on a curved roadway. B. Theft of a parked vehicle. C. Damage from colliding with a deer. D. Damage caused by backing into a pole. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is theft of a parked vehicle, which is a non-collision peril covered under comprehensive. Collision coverage applies only to impact losses. Reason A is not correct. An overturning loss is treated as collision because it involves impact or upset of the vehicle. Reason C is not correct. Striking an animal is classified as collision under standard definitions. Reason D is not correct. Backing into a pole is considered a collision event, not a comprehensive peril. Question 12. Which coverage applies to this claim? A. Liability coverage. B. Underinsured motorist coverage. C. Uninsured motorist coverage. D. Medical payments coverage. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is uninsured motorist coverage because it reimburses bodily injury losses when an at-fault driver has no liability insurance or cannot be identified. Reason A is not correct. Liability coverage protects others injured by the insured, not the insured when struck by an uninsured driver. Reason B is not correct. Underinsured motorist coverage responds only when the at-fault driver's limits are insufficient, not absent. Reason D is not correct. Medical payments coverage pays minor medical expenses regardless of fault and is already exhausted in this scenario. Question 13. Which statement best describes how the UIM coverage responds? A. It pays $55,000, the difference between the insured's damages and the at-fault driver's liability limit. B. It pays the entire $80,000 in damages because the at-fault insurer's limit is inadequate. C. It pays only $25,000, matching the at-fault driver's liability limit. D. It pays nothing until the at-fault insurer denies liability. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is that the underinsured motorist coverage pays the difference between the insured's damages and the at-fault driver's liability limit, which here is $80,000 minus $25,000. Reason B is not correct. Underinsured motorist coverage does not pay the full damages, only the difference above the at-fault limit up to the policy limit. Reason C is not correct. Paying only the at-fault limit describes liability, not UIM coverage. Reason D is not correct. UIM coverage does not require denial by the at-fault insurer before payment. It triggers automatically when limits are inadequate. Question 14. Which individual would be insured under the policy's liability coverage when operating the vehicle with permission? A. An unrelated friend given permission to use the insured vehicle for errands. B. A cousin who lives out of state but borrows the vehicle occasionally. C. A valet driver parking the vehicle for a fee. D. An employee using the vehicle for work-related deliveries. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is the unrelated friend with permission, as personal auto liability extends to any driver using the covered vehicle with the insured's consent. Reason B is not correct. A cousin living out of state who is not a resident relative does not qualify under resident relative provisions. Reason C is not correct. Valet services for a fee may be excluded if not specifically covered. Paid operators are not permissive users. Reason D is not correct. Employee use for business purposes may require a business auto policy rather than personal auto coverage. Question 15. What is the photographer's status under the business auto policy's liability coverage when operating the van with permission? A. An insured as a permissive user. B. An insured only if specifically named. C. Not insured because subcontractors are excluded. D. Insured for physical damage but not liability. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is that the photographer is an insured as a permissive user, since the business auto policy extends liability coverage to any person operating a covered auto with the insured's consent. Reason B is not correct. Business auto liability extends to permissive users and not solely to named insureds. Reason C is not correct. Subcontractors are not automatically excluded if operating with the insured's permission. Reason D is not correct. Liability coverage applies to permissive users. Physical damage coverage is separate. Question 16. Under the workers' compensation exclusive remedy provision, an injured employee is barred from pursuing what kind of legal action against an employer? A. A negligence-based tort suit. B. A dispute over premium payment. C. A statutory benefits review. D. A contractual indemnity action. The correct answer is A. The exclusive remedy provision prevents injured employees from filing negligence-based tort lawsuits against employers, requiring them to seek compensation through statutory benefits. Reason B is not correct. Disputes over premium payments relate to insurance contract terms rather than tort liability under the exclusive remedy. Reason C is not correct. Statutory benefits reviews concern entitlement to compensation, not barred tort claims. Reason D is not correct. Contractual indemnity actions involve separate agreements, not employee negligence suits covered by the exclusive remedy. Question 17. Which factor primarily distinguishes an independent contractor from an employee for workers' compensation classification? A. The entity's right to direct and control methods of work performance. B. The payment of federal payroll taxes by the hiring party. C. The provision of tools and equipment by the worker. D. The pursuit of other clients or customers by the worker. The correct answer is A. Independent contractors are defined by the hiring party's lack of direction and control over how they perform their work, making control the primary distinguishing criterion. Reason B is not correct. Payment of payroll taxes reflects administrative practice, not the core classification factor. Reason C is not correct. Tool provision is a secondary consideration and not the primary determinant of classification. Reason D is not correct. Serving multiple clients suggests independence but is less determinative than control over work methods. Question 18. A maintenance technician employed by Apex Manufacturing uses a company-issued lift at the end of his shift to hoist his personal motorcycle into a truck bed parked on the factory premises. While adjusting the winch, he sustains a back injury. Under the course and scope of employment definition, which factor most strongly supports denying workers' compensation benefits? A. The activity occurred after scheduled working hours. B. The task was performed within the employer's physical premises. C. Use of company equipment to service personal property. D. The technician holds the required equipment certification. The correct answer is C. Using company equipment for a personal purpose shows the activity was outside the employee's job duties and thus outside the course and scope of employment. Reason A is not correct. Performing the activity after hours alone does not conclusively place it outside employment duties. Reason B is not correct. Location on the employer's premises does not guarantee the act was within job responsibilities. Reason D is not correct. Holding proper certification addresses safe operation but does not align the act with assigned duties. Question 19. A software engineer telecommutes but must attend an on-site client presentation each week. On travel day, she stops for an unauthorized coffee run and then slips in the company parking garage upon returning. Which injury scenario is most likely considered non-compensable under standard workers' compensation rules? A. Slipping on ice while walking from designated employee parking to the office lobby. B. Tripping over cables in the required home office while setting up employer equipment. C. Becoming dehydrated during an unpaid lunch break in the company cafeteria. D. Slipping in the company parking garage immediately after an unapproved personal detour. The correct answer is D. The injury followed a personal detour unrelated to work duties, placing the event outside the employment context, under the special mission and coming and going rules. Reason A is not correct. Incidental travel on the employer's premises for work-related entry is typically compensable. Reason B is not correct. Injuries in a mandated home office setup are generally covered for telecommuters. Reason C is not correct. On-premises breaks can still be compensable if tied to employment obligations. Question 20. After a conveyor belt malfunction at Zenith Textiles, a machine operator sues the employer alleging negligence caused nerve damage. Which element of employer's liability coverage addresses exposures that statutory workers' compensation does not? A. Reimbursement for wages lost beyond statutory limits. B. Payment of medical expenses for specialized therapies. C. Defense costs and liability for employee negligence suits. D. Coverage of state-mandated rehabilitation service surcharges. The correct answer is C. Employer's liability coverage supplements the workers' compensation statute by covering legal defense and damages in employee lawsuits alleging employer negligence beyond the Compensation Act. Reason A is not correct. Statutory benefits already include wage loss reimbursements within defined limits. Reason B is not correct. Workers' compensation statutes typically cover medical expenses, including specialized treatment. Reason D is not correct. Rehabilitation services and related surcharges are provided under statutory compensation, not employer's liability. Enjoyed this practice test? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a classmate. Got a question we should tweak? Comment below, we read them all. Find full practice exam books in the description or at ExamPrep.School.